Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adventure with Roger. Tonight I'm going into a game called Reign of Darkness, which started on Kickstarter back in 2019 and was released on Steam. And it's got a very Dungeons and Dragons-esque thing going for it that I like. And it's not your typical cookie cutter theme park ride MMORPG. It's got a lot of cool aspects to it. Right now it's still an basically I would call alpha, halfway through alpha, maybe the beginning of beta. And the developers are a small, very small team. It started out with one individual, and right now we have a playable game that has 8 different classes to choose from. Now, you don't start the class when you make the character. You actually go into the game, you level up, and you have points that you require which let you go into different skill lines. As of right now, we have Archer, Wraith, Barbarian, Priest, Paladin, Sorcerer, Shaman, and Necromancer. Each class has 15 different skills. You can go into each tree and essentially cross-class, and for silver you can unlearn your skills. Then you have attribute points that you can go into: strength, dex, vitality, intelligence, conviction, elemental, runic divinity, weapons, defense, physical, healing, and magic. When you first log in, you find yourself in a nice little starter town area. You get a quest from a blacksmith to go kill some pigs, get him some meat, and then he gives you a really nice sword for bringing the meat back to him. And then you talk to this other lady. She tells you to go get some poison sacks from some scorpions, and you bring them back, and she gives you a couple levels. And most of the quests at the beginning are pretty much repeatable quests, so you can just keep doing them over and over again to get some easy levels. So let's talk movement. The movement in Reign of Darkness is very similar to other MMOs. You got AWSD as your movement keys, you got spacebar to jump, and numbers lock will lock in run forward for you. Now up here at the top of these stairs there's 4 quests total, and one in particular gives you a free bag, so that's something to take note of because it's the only bag that I noticed you can get early on in the game, and all the other ones you have to buy with these tokens that either you get off the cash shop or tokens that you get off boss drops. Now there is a small storyline behind the game. I won't read the whole thing, I'll just give you the gist of it. There was a black plague in 1348 AD, but it wasn't what it appeared to be. Mankind unleashed darkness upon the land and therefore themselves. A cabal formed, spreading rumors of how powerful they were, when in fact they knew nothing but parlor trickery. However, this inspired many, and from that arose the pursuit of real magic. Few who practiced saw results, but some did. 3 magi combined their efforts in an attempt to gain dominion over the most powerful entity of the spirit world. Long story short, they were drawn into a portal, they got eaten alive, and that entity gained physical form and came into this world that we find ourselves in now. Long story short. Alright guys, so let's talk combat. I found myself very drawn into the impactfulness and how diversified the combat is in this game. For instance, I started off as a sorcerer. I immediately went fireball, and then I got all kinds of skills and abilities and passive abilities to make my fireballs hit harder, my mana to regen faster, giving me increased element, which makes me hit harder, and so on and so forth. And I found myself just wanting to try every single class. Obviously I didn't do that because it's a time sink, and you want to kind of stick to one theme when you're first starting off to see how powerful you can get. One thing I noticed is that they have a built-in DPS meter right at the bottom of the screen next to the chat box, and I noticed from the time I hit about level 5 to 10 that my damage had significantly increased by about 500%. So it doesn't take very long before you're just destroying stuff. I had a blast with the whole fireball build. Now, one other area I'd like to talk about is loot, and how diversified and awesome the loot table is in this game. It doesn't matter if you're killing a level 1, a level 20, or a level 100. The gear is just absolutely beautiful looking, and it's all completely randomized stats and completely random on when you're going to get loot. I think there was several times when I killed like a level 1 and I got some just awesome piece of gear I wasn't expecting. And it's so refreshing to have that happen early on in a game, to give you choices on how you want to spec your character, and it just diversifies everything at the beginning of the game when you're getting loot that you just didn't expect, and the different directions that you can go. Now, before I even hit level 10, I had pieces of gear that would let me go to be a full-on melee tank, a DPS type roguish character, or even like a like, I don't know what they call it, the Wraith is more kind of like a Shadow Knight type situation. And then I obviously picked like a Fire Mage, which is called the Sorcerer, and there's a Ranger, and there's bows and axes and swords. I mean, and you see all of this before you hit level 10. So it's really, really comforting and nice to know that you have all those choices so early in the game. And one thing that makes all the difference in any MMO you're going to play in is the community. Now, the first thing I noticed is that every time I went to town, if there was like a higher level character in town, they basically went out of their way to talk to me and ask me how it's going. And this one guy named Randy Magnum actually gave me a mount, and it's like awesome, because the whole time I was trying to level on my own, I was like, man, you have to run super far. But as soon as he gave me a mount, I was like, man, this makes all the difference. Now, one thing I did notice, because the game is still being developed, is that mounts have a really hard time going down hills. As you notice right here in the gameplay, I get stuck over in this one area briefly for a couple of seconds because the mounts don't like to go down hills. I'm not sure what it is about it. I'm sure they'll fix it in the future, but that's one thing I did notice, which was kind of comical. Luckily for me, there was no monsters aggroing me at the time. But this one guy did take me into a dungeon, so you are going to get to see a little bit of dungeon play right here. And it's kind of funny because all the mobs in this dungeon are literally like level 90 plus, and every time he kills one I level, so check it out here real quick. Also, one thing I'd like to point out is how beautiful this dungeon is. I've seen AAA games who have spent $100 million on their game not have a dungeon that looked this cool. So only having a few developers, and in the beginning only having one guy spending so much time making this stuff look good, who wouldn't want to support and give a couple of dollars to play this game on Steam? I mean, just take a look for yourself. It's incredible what they've accomplished with so little, let alone what they could accomplish if they actually had a huge team and more money to work with. One other thing I'd like to talk about is that the way they implemented the end of the dungeon loot in this game, that I've only seen in a few other AAA games that spent a long time thinking about how the loot should work. Basically, at the end of the dungeon, and it took World of Warcraft like, I don't know how many, like 10 years to figure this out. Anyways, at the end of the dungeon, you basically click on the chest, and every player has its own loot table that they loot out of the chest. So there's no bickering between players or any of that bullshit that goes along with rolling for one piece of loot that everybody wants, or if there's two rogues in the group, nobody's crying because somebody got the dagger that the other one wanted. So that's one really cool aspect of this game. Now, one other thing that I'd like to talk about real quick is the game itself is actually challenging, and that's the fun aspect of it, in my opinion. So many of today's newer MMOs are just what I like to call easy cookie cutter Care Bear video games. And basically what I mean by that is tells you where to go, what to do, what skills you should hit, and everything that you try to kill is just way too easy. There's no challenge to it whatsoever. And the one thing I really like about this game is from level 1 to I think I get to like maybe level 24 in this video, something like that. Every single thing I kill on my own is a complete challenge. And even watching this guy kill this level 99 fire boss, basically, you can see by his mana bar and his HP, that this is challenging for him. Like, he doesn't just stand in that room. He actually has to think about what he's doing. He probably has to time out his abilities properly to be able to do it. And he had probably took him a few tries to figure it out. It's not like he just came in here and rickrolled the place on his first try. Like, he probably had to respec his character once or twice and figure out what he liked best. And so much of that stuff doesn't exist anymore in a lot of today's MMORPGs. You basically, even WoW for instance now, you have one spec that's really good on each class and everybody wants to know what that spec is, and as soon as one guy posts it on YouTube, everybody specs to that spec and everyone PvPs with that spec. And this game, I just don't see that happening. I just see that you really have to put some thought into it, where to spend your points, where to spend your hundreds of stat points on your character itself, and there's quite a bit of thought that would have to go into it. And that's one thing that I really like about this game so far, and I really hope the developers keep going with that thought in mind, that the more diversified it is, the awesomer this game is going to get. So I have been on kind of a hype train, ramping it up about this game so far, and to be quite honest with you, it's just got that little niche to it that makes it a lot of fun. You know, it is still in what I would call an early access type situation. The game isn't perfect. My spells, my fireball spells do miss a little bit more than I'd like them to, even on mobs that I'm out leveling by over 10 levels. It might be a gear situation because I haven't gotten a lot of upgrades. I'm still basically wearing like the same gear I got at level 5 at level 24 because I haven't gotten a lot of upgrades for my specific level. And that could have something to do with it. There are other little things like, I did fall off the edge of the world once when I was exploring in their little PvP area, and I had to find my way out of it. There's no like Hearthstone back to town or anything like that that I know of. I probably could have Googled it and found out that there's probably like a /stuck mechanism or something like that that I don't know about. But, you know, it's not perfect, but there's so much good hours of good gameplay in this game that I'm willing to overlook all the little flaws it has because it's still in development. And I actually do encourage people to check it out, even if it's just for a few hours, because it is pretty inexpensive game. And you could probably, you know, play it for a couple hours, put it down, and then later on when you're just bored of what you're playing, you come back and pick it up for a few more hours to see what they've added. I noticed in the past few days of playing to level 1 through 24 or whatnot, that there was like a bug where every time I tried to pick something up and add it to my storage box that I have in town, that I wouldn't be able to just add it. Like, I would have to pick it up, put it back in my bag, and then take it from the bag and put it back into the storage. And then I logged in the next day and that was completely fixed. So they are like actively working on that stuff, which is really cool. And like I said, you know, you just check it out for a while and then come back to it another day. Well, my time here is almost up. I just want to say thank you for showing interest in my video. I really appreciate every single person that watches. Please hit the subscribe button to the bottom right of the screen. It's free and really helps me out. You will also be notified that way of my future content on YouTube. I do a lot of videos on random games for PC that I find interesting. Once again, my name is Roger. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next adventure.